everybody. What's going on? It's Blair Johnson with the Badass Records podcast, welcoming you in for another episode. Pleased to share that this week's guest is none other than stand-up comic Jamie Campbell. You can find his stuff at jamiecampbellcomedy.com. He's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, streaming services, and YouTube, the latter of which you can find Big Dad Energy, his hour-long stand-up special that is definitely worth you checking out. Follow him on the socials for the upcoming stand-up hour he's going to release with Dry Bar. And he's got a few movie projects in the works as well, so definitely check him out. This podcast airs Thursdays on YouTube and where you stream. Socials are Twitter and Instagram if you want to keep tabs on it that way. The website where everything lives is badassrecordspodcast.com. And if you want to get in touch with me regarding an episode that you would like to be on, hit me at badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. That's all I got going on for you this week. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for sharing some of your time with me. I think we'll be doing episode 161 of Badass Records Podcast.
Awesome.
Jamie Campbell in the house. Very nice to meet you.
Good to be here.
JamieCampbellComedy.com, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, plus streaming sources. Handsome site. Looks real nice.
Oh, thanks. I do it myself.
Cool. You see, you got dates all the way through August.
Yeah, I actually just booked my first date of 2026 as well.
Okay.
In February. I'm going to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. That's where the Trail of Tears ended,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes.
I went to college there, and it's kind of a cool homecoming story because their theater department reached out to me. They book touring acts, like 4 different shows throughout the year to come in. And when I was a student there, well, a long time ago, I was on the local theater stage crew that would, when a touring act would come in, we would load in their set and put it up. And now I'm one of those touring acts that's coming in all these years later. So that's kind of neat.
So if you see somebody doing something wrong, you can be like, hey, man.
Yeah.
I've done that job before. No,
But
anyway, dates through August and then a 2026 date, all of which have ticket links.
Either ticket links or venue links. Sometimes I'll book a show way in advance and they don't have the ticket on the website, but I'd like to go ahead and put the dates up so that people that are interested can go ahead and mark their calendar. Yeah. And so I'll always update it with a ticket link once tickets are available, but sometimes it'll say venue info. But that way you can plan, your trip if it's going to be far away or just generally know where it's at.
So since you do it all yourself, is this... are you carving out a window each week? Are you having to get in there daily? Like, what does that look like?
It varies just depending on what my schedule is like. Right now, I've got 3 feature films, 3 movies in various stages of one's in pre-production that we're going to shoot later this year. One is in production. We are actively shooting it, and one just got finished. We're in post-production doing the finishing touches and sending it out to festivals. And they're all very different movies.
Okay.
One is a horror comedy where I play the father of a teenage exorcist.
Oh,
and
my.
Spoiler alert, I get my head blown off in this movie, and the footage of that looks amazing.
Nice.
I showed it to somebody earlier today. He looked at it, and he just went, whoa, and went back in his seat. It was really cool. Another one is a family slapstick Christmas comedy.
Okay.
Very different than Demonic Possession.
Right.
And then another one is going to be a black and white noir, like an LGBTQ noir comedy.
Okay.
Cool. Murder mystery. Well, it's a comedy, but it's also a murder mystery. So it's combining a bunch of styles, and it is by Patrick Poe and Lolo Loren, who are 2 of the coolest local filmmakers.
Nice. Very
here
nice.
in Kansas City, yeah.
Hit me with those names again, please.
Yeah, Patrick Poe and Lolo Loren. They run IX Film Productions, which is a really cool indie production company. They were the cinematographers and co-producers of the other movie, the one where I get my head blown off.
Okay.
That one's called Taffy, and
Nice.
I came on board as a producer because I loved how much it turned out, or how well it turned out. That I was like, I want to make sure this gets into some festivals. So
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm psyched.
So Big Dad Energy, YouTube and streaming, and you said the venue was
The Bird Comedy Theater.
Bird Comedy Theater, Crossroads, River
Yeah,
Market?
it's in the Crossroads.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
right next to Town Topic.
Okay. Oh,
Like 19th and
wow.
Baltimore.
There you go. All right. Man, it's 6 months old on YouTube, or is it older than that?
The special's a
year?
little over a year. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's got 20K, right?
Yeah,
in that neighborhood.
Yeah, it's in that
views?
neighborhood. And that's not bad for somebody that doesn't have a marketing team or a little studio
I'd
or
say
anything
it's better
like that.
than not bad. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I feel pretty good about it. And we just released the album version on Mint 400 Records, which is such a cool indie rock record label out of New Jersey. They released a comedy album back before comedians were putting out indie specials. Doing an album release was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And way back in 2015, I released an album with them, and it topped the indie charts.
Nice.
And then when this came out, I was like, I'd rather release the audio through them again because they know what they're doing. And so they put it out. It took a little while because we wanted to make sure that the publishing, because sometimes when you release an album, there will be like arguments and disputes between the record company and then the audio from the special that was released through a film production company. And so just dealing with some of the legalese of that made it where the album release took a little longer.
Okay. So, oftentimes the person sitting in your seat is a musician or a band member, and they, put stuff, record and produce and mix and master and put it on Bandcamp and through the streaming services. As somebody who can do stuff on his own, why not put it on the streaming services directly, as opposed to the way you did go, which is through this label?
Well, one is I really love the guy who runs Mint 400 Records. The fact that these guys believed in me when I was first starting out.
Cool.
I'm a big loyalty person. Like, if I go to a city and a bigger venue offers me something, a venue that believed in me years ago, I'm going to go to them first before I go to a bigger venue, just because to me that holds a lot of cachet. Somebody,
Sure.
Seeing you from the beginning and believing that you're capable of something great. But also Mint 400 has kind of a distribution platform. The publishing is through Sony, and
Gotcha.
also they do some radio promotion and things like that. And they've built up their own fan base. So I think people that don't know me, if they see that Mint 400 Records put out my album,
Yeah.
they're going to check it out. And I think a lot of their listeners are kind of in that Gen X vein, and maybe a little bit younger, but are into like everything that is on their label is kind of influenced by a lot of the same musical influences that I had growing up.
Okay, cool. Very
And
cool.
they're really cool. Neil has a band called Fairmont that I really love. He started off in a band called Pensy Prep, and when the band broke up, he started Fairmont and his own record label. The guitar player from the band ended up joining My Chemical Romance.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of a
Nice.
cool origin story from that band.
So you talk about a relationship with a venue that believed in you when you were up and coming. How does one forge a relationship with a venue? Is it like a band that, hey, here's my tape, I'd love to play a show at your spot, and do you open mic there? Do you send them material?
It's really tough because when you're doing stand-up comedy, you are instantly in an entire pool full of other people who say, I do stand-up comedy, I'm a comedian. Some of them maybe are not seasoned or are not funny, are people who love the idea of being a comedian, but they haven't put in the work and the time. And when you run a venue, you're being contacted by all of those people as well as by working comedians. So I've got to try to stand out from all of the madness and chaos coming their way. The best way that I found to do that is to get an introduction from somebody that they already know. So a lot of the independent venues that I tend to tour to or perform at, somebody that I knew from when I was coming up on the comedy scene, and usually in Chicago. that have moved away from Chicago and gone to some of these other cities. They've either started their own venue, or maybe before they moved to Chicago, they were in another city and they had like a regular venue that they were performing at, or a friend of theirs started at a venue. And so a lot of these indie venues, somebody vouches for me.
Okay. So do you think that like, yeah, you know, an indie venue dude in Chicago and you're going to play in Portland. And so does the Portland dude call the Chicago dude and say, what kind of, do you have numbers? You know, sales, you know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, a lot of these places, they have created their own independent venue because they just love the art.
Okay.
And so a lot of times it's a performer-owned venue.
Cool.
As opposed to a booker-owned venue, which is where they're just looking at the bottom line of numbers and how much money you can make for them.
Right.
And so as an indie artist that is not a household name, a lot of times I partner with the venues and I'm like, I'm going to help you guys, and we're going to collectively come up with our marketing plan. I'm going to send you all of the things to market, and we are together going to try to figure out a way to get people
Do you find
into the
that
seats.
is appreciated, or are folks like, we've got our own system?
Usually they do have somewhat of their own system, but they appreciate that I have the materials. They're not going to have to go, oh, I've got to get a graphic designer to make stuff for you. I'm going to hand them a template that they've just got to slap their information on.
Cool.
I'm going to send them sample videos that they can send out that are good clips, so that they're not just reposting the same graphic image over and over on social media.
Yeah.
That becomes a big thing, but also a lot of times I'll package workshops or Q&As or things so that I can talk to the other young or new performers in the area and talk about that journey, because I've been a guy who's like literally toured all over the country on Greyhound buses, staying on strangers' couches.
Right.
I've done the punk rock version of comedy, and now I'm sort of leveling up a little bit, and it's kind of nice that, you know, I'm headlining some mid-level clubs.
Yeah.
But with a Dry Bar special coming out, they've got millions in their audience. So I'm excited to hopefully have that level me up a little bit more.
Sure. Are you? I mean, you're like every bit of 20 years into this, right?
Just about 20.
Just
Yeah,
about,
I'm over 15
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. So, how did the relationship with Dry Bar come to be?
You know, it was actually, I took a course last year, and it was like basically a year-long course, long enough that I got like a certificate for completing it. Through Mel Robbins. Are you familiar with the motivational speaker,
Yeah.
Mel Robbins?
Blonde lady?
Yeah, I took her launch
She's
program.
everywhere right now.
She's incredible, though.
She's super sharp, and she came up like 2 episodes ago.
Really?
A restaurant with her husband.
Yes.
And successful, and they're like location 2 and 3, and it crippled them.
Yes,
and they
that's
had to
her
like
story.
crawl out of, and now she's like got all this insane wisdom that she's sharing.
Yeah, I found her in the pandemic, and she had a course on dealing with anxiety.
Okay.
I was having a tough time as a stand-up. I was dealing with serious stage fright, and I was a decade in at that point.
Wow.
And I was having a lot of imposter syndrome, and I think a big part of it was that my material didn't resonate with me anymore. It was a lot of that cynical stuff that you kind of go through that stage in your late 20s, early 30s, where you're a little bit angry, where life didn't quite land you where you wanted. But suddenly I found myself, like I had found somebody that I was in love with, and life was good. And I found that what I was talking about with all this material that I had cultivated before I had met her, it didn't resonate with audiences anymore, probably because it wasn't resonating with me anymore. I was getting older. I was suddenly happier. I had a positive outlook at life, but my art, my art wasn't reflecting any of that.
Trying to be pissed off over here.
Exactly. And nobody was buying it. And so I threw it all out. And then coming out of the pandemic, I was considering just quitting stand-up altogether. I was like, what if as we return to normal, I just don't do this anymore? My heart wanted to do it, but I felt all of the feelings that I had felt pre-pandemic, with the anxiety of not connecting with the audience, with the material that I had had. And so I was like, well, what if instead of quitting, what if I just did it in a way that was truthful to me and just took that risk of throwing out everything I'd spent a decade building and began at the foundation again. And that's when I put together Big Dad Energy, which is a super positive.
I was going to say, I mean,
show.
I think that, like, without question, but correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you could have the clean label slapped on you.
I think that's a big reason of why I got Dry Bar. Now, Big Dad Energy is not for kids. I
Right.
talk about drugs. I
Yes.
talk about sex.
I'm going to go have sex with your mom.
Right, exactly.
You
But
said you were going to bring this up. This is a D.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's definitely for grown-ups. But and so I'd say like it's not squeaky clean Mr. Rogers, but
No.
you could say everything that I say on that album on television in like on a regular network.
Right.
However, but yeah, I would say you don't want to bring the kids to it. I think that's a big reason that Dry Bar was interested in me though, because a lot of comedians that submit, they look at their material. The comedians are saying, well, I can be clean, but then they're looking through their stuff and they're like, it's not clean, and all we do is clean. So when I did the Dry Bar special, I cannot talk about sex. I cannot talk about drugs with that. So I wrote a brand new special specifically for them, kind of talking about being middle-aged in middle America.
So what was the intersection of you and Dry Bar and Mel Robbins?
Okay. Oh, yes. So I took her launch program, and part of the launch program is you do 3 different 30-day sprints on a project of your choosing. And I had just released this stand-up special, but I wasn't getting a lot of bookings outside of local spaces.
Right.
So part of that project is you're going to spend 15 minutes working on this project every day, minimum 15 minutes. And so I decided my project was going to be that I'm going to put my stand-up out there, and I'm going to submit to either a comedy festival, a comedy book, or a comedy agency once a day for that 30 days. I don't have a lot of these contacts, so every day I had to research. A lot of times it took me more than 15 minutes. Find an email, put together a personalized email with links, introducing myself, and I did that every day for probably about 75 days.
Okay.
And I got no response on most.
Gonna say, did you get a 1 or 2?
I got a handful though.
Okay,
I did get some bookings. I got to play 6 different comedy festivals. I performed on both coasts last year, and then I got some new kind of smaller club headlining gigs from places that I'd not been to. And those gigs went well, which was nice because now that's a relationship that you've maintained.
Course.
They want you to come back.
And are those, do you pick a middler or an opener, or does the venue do it?
It varies.
It varies, okay.
Because I like to travel alone. I don't like to drive with somebody else. But sometimes I will pick an opener. If it's not too far, I've got kind of a handful of local comics that I know I can trust that are not going to alienate the audience before I go up. Because my comedy is clean enough that, like, if I do a show and I'm going up after somebody that has just, done a bunch of graphic sex jokes, then the audience with me, they're waiting for it to get shocking. Yeah. And so they can't just settle in and enjoy the show.
You can't recover from that.
Yeah.
Vibe-wise.
Right, exactly.
Energy-wise.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So I'm doing that, and I pull up, some days it's a manager or a booking agency. Some days it's a festival. Some days it's a club venue. And one of my emails was to this agency, Summit Entertainment, and I messaged them with my full special, and I expected maybe if I got any response, they would be possibly talking about maybe a cruise ship gig or colleges. I had no connection, so there was no like, so-and-so told me to meet you. I assumed they would not even open my email.
Right.
But I got a message back, I guess they liked it, asking me about cruise ships and then also Dry Bar. And just if I had any interest in Dry Bar. And I was like, I absolutely have interest in Dry Bar. The agent said, I help book some of those. And I didn't hear back for 8 months. So I assumed Dry Bar had passed and it wasn't even going to happen. But 8 months later, I get this message saying Dry Bar is scheduling their next season. Let me know your availability. And I'm freaking out on the inside. Because they've got, just Facebook alone is like 8 million followers.
Oh, for real?
Yeah,
okay.
Not to mention Instagram, TikTok, their YouTube is millions of subscribers.
Wow.
So it's major. And they have their own streaming service because they're owned by Angel Studios, which is the company that produced like The Chosen and The Sound of Freedom and like a bunch of...
So they're a production company.
They are a production company.
Okay.
And I gave my availability just going, well, he didn't say I've definitely got it.
Right.
So I'm waiting to hear back. Then when I get the date, I'm excited, but I'm still not announcing anything. I'm not saying anything.
Dangerous.
It is dangerous.
How do you backpedal if you have something has to change?
I've done that. I've had some things that were supposed to air on TV. One time there was a show called Laughs on Fox. It was going to air a sketch of mine. And then the director didn't like their terms of service, the director of the sketch. And he was like, I'm going to pull it. I don't want to air it. And I was like, man, we already got the airing schedule, and I announced it. My family's like got it in their calendar. So I didn't say anything until I had a contract signed, and also that like I got the thumbs up from Dry Bar that I could announce it.
Right.
But even then, I'm checking their calendar or like the club announcements, like to make sure my name is on there. And once my name was on there, that's when I felt comfortable saying, "Hey, I'm recording this."
Legit.
Exactly.
Nice. Very cool. So Pryor, Oklahoma.
Yeah, Pryor, Oklahoma. That's a town of about 8,000.
Okay.
That's where I was born in 1979.
Nice. Siblings.
I've got 5. Well, I've got 4. I was counting myself in the 5. I'm not my own brother.
No.
I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay.
I've got a
Shouts
sister.
out to firstborns.
Yeah, nice. So I've got a sister, and then I've got 3 brothers that have different fathers.
Gotcha.
Than me.
Okay. Any idea how your mom and dad met?
They were high school. Well, I don't want to say sweethearts.
Sure.
It was a terrible relationship that was really only existed, I think, for me and my sister to walk this earth.
There you go. I could say the exact same.
Good.
Yeah. So did they put on music to listen to in the home when you and your sister were younger?
Yeah, my dad was, he was the son of a calf roping rodeo kind of a guy. My grandfather owned a ranch and was into race horses. Like
Okay.
he actually had investments in a couple of different race horses, so he owned part of the horse. I'm not sure which part.
Right, yeah.
So country music was a huge thing there.
Sure.
And the big music influence for me growing up, though, was my Uncle Mark.
Okay.
So I was born my mom's senior year of high school. And so her youngest brother was just 6 years older than me. So he's basically like a big brother to me.
Wow.
And a lot of the music growing up, like he's the guy that I looked up to. And so what he was into early on was what I was into. And a lot of that was 80s metal.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which was a huge influence on me. And then I kind of expanded out. We lived in a lot of, growing up, kind of rougher neighborhoods, more urban neighborhoods. And a lot of that influence is where I got really into hip-hop as a young kid.
Okay. I've oftentimes referred to the music that is being played in our home as little people as kind of like the furniture. It's there, you know it, you develop a relationship with it, but eventually you sort of begin to cobble your own taste. You branch out, as you said. Not necessarily referring to the list that you shared with me, but is there a first album that sort of stands out that you bought with your own money or fell in love with or borrowed from a buddy?
The first album that I actually owned, the first CD, was Offspring's Smash.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because that album is so different from a lot of the radio releases that you get from the Offspring later on. Like, because you're hearing like things like "Pretty Fly for a White Guy" or like "Why Don't You Get a Job" that have that tongue-in-cheek humor. Offspring was very much angst and rage filled, and there was a little bit of a humor in it, but it was dark, and it really just there's this gut churning thing that happens when you're a teenager because everything is so important.
I think that's the definition of angst, is it not? Yeah,
absolutely.
Gut churning, teenage, important, feigned important.
Yeah. And Smash like did that, like it evoked that emotion perfectly. When Come Out and Play came out, that was huge. I was in West Palm Beach, Florida at that point.
Okay.
And so, that was the first actual CD that I bought with my own money.
Nice. Any early or first concert memories?
The first concert I remember going to was it was called the Buzz Bake Sale. So the local alternative radio station was called 103.1 The Buzz in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Gotcha.
And they held kind of a music festival, a one-day festival that was headlined by Green Day. It was called the Bake Sale because there were 13 bands, a baker's dozen.
Nice.
I was headlined by Green Day, and then who else was there? The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones were there.
That was in your Big Dad Energy set when you said for the 18 months that ska was popular again?
Ska was major for me. In the late 90s, early 2000s. Ska was a huge influence.
Daddy.
Oh, well, that was kind of the resurgence of swing, too.
Cherry Pop.
The Cherry Pop and Daddies, those were more swing than ska.
Okay. Okay.
Ska's play like Less Than Jake.
Yep.
Oh gosh, so many other bands. Bucko 9. There was this big third wave ska where it was like ska fusing with punk in this kind of fun way. Operation Ivy was probably the first major influence that led to that resurgence.
Cool. So this one-day festival was first concert?
First concert. Like there were times that like I'd been, at a park festival and some local band played or something. But the first actual concert, I would say first, like, watching a band play was a little bit before that. There was a band called the Grooveniks.
Okay.
That were a local, like, some of them were members of my high school, but they were a little older.
Gotcha.
And they were amazing. Their live shows were insane. They ended with this heavy metal cover of Young MC's Bust a Move. And the house would lose it.
I bet.
It was incredible. They put on, just like their show visually was incredible. And the music sonically it was the sound of rebellion. It was really cool.
Cool. So you undergrad in Tahlequah and then some grad school in Stillwater.
Yeah.
So then working and acting, yet you at some point pivot for comedy. What was that realization or that epiphany like where you're like, this is what I want to
Well,
do?
I was in graduate school at Oklahoma State University, and I'm a classically trained actor. I just played Brutus in Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Which is a heavy, heavy role. It's probably the role with the most lines in that play.
I was just going to say that it's got to be up there in lines.
It's the biggest role. People are like, oh, Julius Caesar, the titular role. Well, he gets killed, and so he doesn't speak anymore after that. And so,
small detail.
Exactly. But Brutus is the one, it's at 2. It's, he is...
Beware the Ides of March. Right?
Yeah, he's essentially the big driving force behind the plot to kill Caesar. And so that was a pretty heavy role. I had played King Henry in The Lion in Winter, which I was a 25-year-old actor in grad school, and this is a 50-year-old character. And a lot of the roles that I was playing were roles that the teachers wanted to play, so they were deciding that we're going to do this production so that if I can't play the role, I can at least direct the role. And that's a terrible position to be in as an actor, because the director is just directing you to play it like they would play it.
Right.
And instead of having some artistic freedom to explore the character, you're just kind of getting driven into the ground.
Right.
And the love and the sense of play and joy and exploration that I had when I first decided I wanted to be an actor was getting sucked out of me. I was just kind of getting beat down.
Okay.
And not having a good time. And so I see this sign on the bulletin board in the green room for basically they treat it like a study abroad program, but you're not going to another country. You're just going to Chicago and studying at Second City.
Sure.
And there's a program called Comedy Studies, where basically for an entire semester, technically you're a Columbia College Chicago student, but all your classes are at the Second City.
Okay.
And so I went into my advisor's office and I was like, hey, this program, I know it says it's an undergrad program, but here are the courses they're offering. Here are the courses that I have left to finish my master's degree. I think these can replace a lot of these. So can I apply and treat this as, part of my graduate program? And they said, well, if you get in, we'll make it work. I applied to the program. There were like essays and letters of recommendation, things like that you had to write in order to try to get in. And the date passed from when you were supposed to have been notified if you got in. And so I went through all the stages of grief.
Gosh.
And I was just angry. I was downtrodden. I was just facing another year of being beat down every day in this grad program that I was not enjoying. I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm going to have to do because I have no other choice. I didn't get into this thing. And so I'm walking to renew my lease on my apartment for another year. And on my way there, I stopped by the mailbox. And of course it's late. It's the Second City. They're a bunch of artists. They're flakes and they don't do anything on time. So my acceptance letter was in there.
Did you send that shit out? You said you were going to.
Exactly. And so I ended up moving to Chicago. And I was supposed to do that semester, then return to graduate school to finish. I started auditioning and getting cast in things and started to perform in improv and sketch comedy.
Okay.
And suddenly that joy that had been sucked out was coming back. And I was starting to feel capable. and I was starting to feel good. I wasn't feeling amazing. There was still so much to learn, but it all felt possible again.
Is there compensation when you're getting cast in those kind of things?
It varies, but a lot of times it's not much. It's not like make a living level.
Right.
It's like buy yourself a beer after the show level of compensation. I would say gas, but it's Chicago, and you're all taking public transit.
Right.
So I never returned to grad school. I dropped out, and that was how I began my comedy career.
Nice.
Fun story. I was waiting on my student loans because they weren't going to show up until I was already supposed to be in Chicago, and that's how I was going to survive that semester.
Right.
So my friend BJ O'Shea, who is a great musician, lent me a few $1,000s to get on my feet. When you start doing comedy, you're going to be broke for a long time. I wasn't able to pay her back. She never made me feel bad, continued to be a supportive friend, and never brought it up. However,
wow,
I've been doing pretty well lately, and just last month, 15 years into comedy, I paid her back.
No way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was a really cool feeling.
That's great. Oh, man. And here, a better part of 20 years later, you've got gigs and specials. Curious about the writing process. Pen and paper, phone, a mixture?
It changes. Okay. A lot of times I'll get an idea by watching other performers. Not like, oh, they're talking about this, let me talk about the same thing and do a better version of their joke. No, but like they might have a topic, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of this experience that I had. And so usually I'll try to jot those down or keep something in my phone. I used to almost always just get up and riff, and that's how I would write. And then if something worked, then I would riff it again and try to keep the parts that worked and then try to find new parts. These days, my instincts as a writer are a lot better than they used to be, so I don't always need an audience in the early stages. I like to sit down, and write, and once I write, then I have to say it out loud.
For sure.
Because the rhythm is so important. Comedy is such a rhythmic art form. And so I say it out loud, and then I'll usually hone and change, and then I go back to the beginning. And I'm constantly making changes until I feel like it's tight and polished. Then when I feel like it's tight and polished, then I go try it out in front of an audience.
Cool.
And if it works, great. Then I will add all of my big, energetic mannerisms. But at first, I'm trying not to add a lot to it.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing if the material's funny.
Yeah.
And then once I know that it's funny, then I can add all of the stage presence and engagement. If you come see me at an open mic when I'm early working on material, you're going to go, how has this guy got a special?
Right.
How is this guy getting booked in places?
I'm glad you said that, because my next question is, in my estimation, I had a Bobcat Goldthwait hour on cassette.
Yeah.
In like 86.
Back when he was really doing the voice and leaning into the character.
Oh, yeah. And the one line that stands out from that hour is he talks about loving Tab.
That's the soda tab.
The ingredients list, see other can, because it's so long.
Oh, yeah.
But also George Wallace. I remember seeing George Wallace, like right when Jeff Dunham is coming out. George Wallace is coming. I watched him do a bit, and he reminisced about the Statue of Liberty, the Civil War chess set made out of fine pewter, and what a lovely thing to. Anyway, but I've like really never departed from being a stand-up fan. So of those that I would put on a Rushmore, if you will, and there's more than just four.
Yeah.
But I love the process that some of those folks seem to employ, which is, here's my kernel of material. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 15, and I open mic and I do small rooms and I build and then I have an hour and I polish it, and then I record it and I put it out, and then I sort of delete it, and I don't go back to that. So I start over.
Yeah.
With new. Do you subscribe to that?
It varies. Like, I'm not going to put out another special that has the material from a previous special.
Right.
And the reason you don't want to do that, first off, if somebody wants to discover my other stuff, like I want somebody that sees my Dry Bar special to go, I want to see what else he's got.
Good.
And so then I want him to go to my special, and I don't want him to go to my indie special, Big Dad Energy, and go, oh, it's the same jokes.
No.
Because I could have used probably about a third of that for the Dry Bar special and gotten all of that in front of a bigger audience than that is already seen. So for this one, I kind of sat down from scratch and wrote the whole thing. I had a couple of jokes that had been kind of sitting around that I knew I could fit in, but I'd say lately now I write to the special. So I come up with a theme or the idea of what the special is, the idea that I want to heighten and explore, and then I write. Usually that becomes a great inspiration for the material. Yeah. Because then I'm like, what is my thesis statement? What am I arguing for? And what are the other things that I believe in surrounding this topic? And then how can I back up those? What's my supporting argument?
Women want pockets.
Exactly, right?
So, yeah, man, like, do you know Theo Von's plum bit?
I'm not sure that I do off the top of my head.
Okay, so I don't know if it was on the stand-up or one of these streaming service programs that had a series or a season, and you get 15 minutes or 30 minutes of 6 different...
Yeah.
I saw him do this bit where he talked about growing up poor, and, you know, the punchline is, so are we going to split that plum or what? And many years later, kind of quasi-recently, he got an hour on Netflix, and, like, that's in it, and I'm like... That stuff's 8 years old, dude. What are you doing? Like,
I'll say this though: if Netflix came calling, I think I might put in some stuff that I know is guaranteed to crush.
Right.
You know, I'm not sure. It's one of those things where you have to make that decision, but also we're at an era with technology where it's so much easier to put out a special than it has ever been.
In the same vein that recording an album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can buy the gear and do it yourself. Or fund it if you, I don't mean.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. Now, getting it out to a huge audience, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Also, recording a special and writing and creating one that's going to be really good is a huge challenge. But the gatekeepers are not standing in your way from creating something that you can put out there in the same way that they used to. Right. And that's a beautiful thing.
Just a sea of no's. No, or no response at all.
Yeah.
Right? From those gatekeepers.
That, to me, is the biggest thing, is sometimes you feel like you're screaming into a void because you put out this, you know, just a simple email that's like, here's a clip, hey, would love to hear back from you, and you don't hear anything. So you don't know if they even opened their email, if they looked at it. You don't know if they watched your clip and said, not for me, or if they didn't even bother to click on the thing that you sent them because they got 30 other emails that day.
So we talked about the movies. We talked about Mint 400, and we talked about Dry Bar. Good stuff. Busy guy. You got wearing a lot of hats.
I am. I'm also working as a screenwriter. The Christmas movie, I actually am a writer on it too, which is pretty cool because the company that is producing it, their last 2 films did really well. One was licensed by Showtime, and so it was on their streamer, and the other was on Amazon Prime and was viewed millions of times.
Awesome.
It was a big hit there. And so, like, there's a really great production company behind it. It's going to be called Gingerbread Men.
Okay.
And it is a really cool story about some kids that eat a magic cookie, and it completely changes Christmas. I play their dad in the movie, and they came and saw me. They scouted me at a comedy show at the Berg Comedy Theater. Jason Hudson, the main writer and the director of the film, asked me to come and meet with him and Isaac Diamond, who is the other main writer of the movie. And we sat and chatted, and they were interested in me as a performer. But then as he got to know me, he found out that I'm a screenwriter, and I've done mostly short films. I haven't had a feature that has been produced yet, although I've got one that right now is being read by an Oscar-nominated producer. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to get too excited about that.
No, cart before the horse.
Exactly. But Jason asked me to write a sample scene. I wrote a sample scene for the the movie, and he loved it and asked me to come in and do kind of some punch up and some additional scene writing.
Okay.
And it was the first time that like my writing is going to be on like a real feature film that is
Cool.
a movie that's going to be in theaters.
So, writing chops come from grad and undergrad, or even further back?
You know, I was in a rap metal band when I was 19, and so
Okay.
I wrote the lyrics for
There you
most
go.
of our songs there. But most of, I'd say stand-up writing helped. But I also wrote a few plays when I was in Chicago. I co-wrote a musical that was it won the Broadway World Award for Best New Work in Chicago Theater.
Nice.
And I went through the Second City's core writing program as
you
well.
go. Okay.
And wrote a ton of sketches. And if you can write a good sketch, you can write a movie, because the structure of a sketch is a complete scene. And if you add that structure to the full arc of a movie, that's going to give you a good foundation. But then during the pandemic, I really dug in and started writing screenplays. I took a couple courses and it became something that I had to do every day.
Sure.
Because all my other work dried up, and I realized if I didn't make my day a work day, I was just gonna, crawl into a bottle and spend the entire pandemic depressed.
Right. And you mentioned some anxiety around that time. Was that largely because your work sources had dried up, or was there other stuff contributing to that?
There were I think as a performer, you hit this point where you're, a decade in, and you feel like you've been spinning your wheels and you're not making any forward momentum.
Right.
And so I was starting to doubt my own value. I wasn't liking the work that I did, and I felt stuck. And so that I created this narrative for audiences around me and for my fellow artists of how people must think about me. None of it really true.
Right.
It takes a lot of active energy to hate somebody.
Yeah.
At worst, most people will be indifferent toward you.
True. Well, I appreciate, again, you being here, and thank you for sharing a list with me. I just normally roll through them.
Sure.
Chronological release order, if that
Yeah,
works.
absolutely.
So then we'll start in 71 with the Baby Huey story.
8 years before I was born.
The living legend.
Yeah.
One of one. 8 tracks, 41 minutes. American singer from Richmond, Indiana. Frontman for Baby Huey and the Babysitters. Comparisons of that outfit to Sly and the Stone, and credited with influencing hip hop, and of course produced by Curtis Mayfield. How'd you get turned on to this?
Oh man, I got turned on to this when I was looking for full albums to play for like pre-show. So this was not an album. This probably is actually, it's the oldest album and the most recent influence on me.
Wow.
So this is probably about a decade ago. I was hosting a live talk show in Chicago. It was called Talk Hard, and we ran every Friday night, and I wanted something that would set a vibe as the audience walked into the room. And I just love...
A live? Okay. In front of folks.
Yeah, this was
Okay.
like I would come out, it was just like basically like a late night talk show that you see on
Sure.
TV, but we had a team of local Chicago comedians that were writing monologue jokes and sketches and
Wow.
fun desk pieces, and usually I'd have like a local comedian and a local musician kind of come out and perform. We ran for a year and a half every single week.
Wow.
It was a really cool experience.
How did you wind up on that path?
Well, I worked at the Comedy Sports Theater at first as their training center manager, and then I started producing shows there. They gave me a Monday night show, and every Monday night for, I don't know, about 6 years, I hosted from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Dang.
We did a stand-up showcase that was booked, and a lot of names from that ended up becoming pretty big names years later. And then after that, I hosted an open mic that ran from about 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I had some friends that would come in, some other comics that kind of joined that. And then eventually we had a full cast of performers that kind of rotated as well as our guests. But so I start producing the stand-up show there, and then they start giving me other fun opportunities. And they said, Fridays at midnight is a time slot we need to fill. This is not about selling tickets and marketing. What we want to do is keep the audience from our 10 o'clock show in the building, buying more drinks. That's how we're going to make money. So we'd offer the show for free to anybody that's sticking around.
Dang.
And let me tell you, they're pretty drunk and they don't have to drive home, so they're keeping the drinks flowing. Sometimes you get some rowdy audiences at that midnight show. But every week we'd write a full show. And
Jeez.
it was exhausting. I was paid very little for it, but I was given a free space to create. And for me, that was invaluable.
I mean, sounds amazing.
And it changed my, I think, what I can do, I think, artistically, because now that I'm in Kansas City, I do a lot of unique shows, and I don't think that I would have had the capability to produce those shows that I do at the Bird Comedy Theater without the education that I got basically by being thrown in the pool and figuring things out for that year and a half. And sometimes it went great. Sometimes it was rough. One time I walked an audience, and I mean the whole audience.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was probably more on me and my own mental health than it was on what was going on with the audience.
You get points for recognizing that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I didn't at the time.
Plenty of people would just stay mad to the grave and point the finger at them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people would. You got to learn to do that mental work. And that was also a big changing factor for me. When I moved to KC, I did a solo show that was a storytelling show about all of my childhood trauma and kind of just basically took all of the painful moments of my childhood and laid them out on a stage. And it was healing. It was like basically therapy with an audience.
Sure.
And then about a year and a half into doing that show, I toured it all over the country. I started to go, oh, it's no longer helping me. It's actually hurting me because I have moved past this.
Yeah.
And now I'm going back into it
If you're
every
going to
show.
let go, you got to let go.
Yeah. And so finally, I stopped doing it because of that. It was a critically acclaimed show that I feel like some people were like, why don't you keep doing this? It's got all these legs. And I'm like, because it's terrible.
How much time do you have?
Exactly. That was definitely a tangent. But anyway, for that Talk Hard show, I wanted the audience to have this vibe that is kind of gritty and soulful. There's still fun behind it, but there's a weight to it. And I felt like Baby Huey when I heard that. Like, it grabbed me. And so the whole album became the pre-show music.
Cool. Do you remember where you were when you heard it?
I was probably in the sound booth at that venue in Chicago. I basically lived at that theater.
I bet.
And I had the keys to the space. I had the keys to the space like 6 months after I moved from Chicago. I had to I was on a trip back and I had to be like, hey guys, I got the keys. You should probably have them back. Yeah. But yeah, and that has been an album that has become a go-to when I just kind of want to set a vibe.
Super fantastic for that.
And what a tragic story. This guy dies at 26 years old.
I know.
Didn't even make it long enough to join the 27 Club.
Very first thing when I saw, I was like, oh, damn, didn't even make it.
I mean, couldn't even live. He didn't live to hear this album come out.
Yeah. Posthumously. How's that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, they call it the living legend, which is kind of ironic because I don't know if it's irony technically, but
either way.
Yeah.
Well, I super enjoyed it and was very thankful that you had it on your list.
Yay.
Big leap forward, though, to 1994 with Rancid's Let's Go.
Oh, yeah. Still in rotation regularly.
2 of 10 for them, 23 tracks, 44 minutes. We go from soul from Richmond to punk out of Berkeley. Big pivot from Baby Huey. Why does this one earn a spot on your list? And have you poked at their other 9 records?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, Out Come the Wolves is probably the gateway for most people to Rancid. Let's Go is the album that came out before that. And for me, it was the gateway that fueled a love for punk rock that I've still got to this day.
Nice.
My friend Roberto Castillo lived in my neighborhood, and he loved Salvation, that first single off of the album. And he had it on either CD or cassette. And this was the era of the blank tape, record the album. And so I had Let's Go, and basically it was in my Walkman on repeat.
Nice.
Every single song on that, this is one of those, it's kind of a gift, because every song in many ways sounds exactly the same. It's about 2.5 minutes of...
Or under 2.
Yeah.
There's a couple of 1 minute change tracks on there.
And it managed just to be like poppy but gritty at the same time.
For sure.
And I think a lot of that is just the vocals. Because they sound like somebody's accidentally been forced to swallow a little bit of gravel. And they feel like, to me, I feel like most of these albums to me feel like they could all be just like a soundtrack to a movie, and this like really makes me feel like I was in that era, just this confused teenager, but still full of hope. Like there's a lot of aggression in this, but there's also just a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And like we're all in this together.
Nice. I think it was them that their most recent, perhaps that 10th, was from 2023.
Yeah, well, they just toured with Green Day. I saw them last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
And Tim Armstrong actually seems like he's, from what I've been reading about, is healthier than he had been for a while. I could be wrong. He does sound like his throat could just collapse at any moment, which is almost what you want from him. But that voice that even back in '94 sounded like it was on the verge of no longer existing. The fact that he can still sing is amazing.
Where was that show with Rancid and Green Day?
That was at Sandstone or Azura Amphitheater?
Always Sandstone.
Always Sandstone. All right.
Good vibe. Good show.
Really good vibe. Green Day, I think Green Day they did too much, in my opinion. And I love Green Day. For me, Dookie era Green Day is always, because that holds its place in my childhood.
Dookie has made several lists.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's still, it actually came pretty close to making mine.
Nice. Yeah.
Fun fact, Radio on this album was co-written with Billy Joe Armstrong.
Yeah.
And, however, Green Day played both Dookie in its entirety and American Idiot in its entirety. I'm too old of a dude. I was ready to be done.
That was their set? It was 2 back-to-back
It was
records?
2 full records. Yeah, and a bunch of the other hits in between as kind of, I was like, it was a lot.
It's a lot of Green Day.
It is a lot of Green Day. And,
were they the headliner?
They were the headliner,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, I guess you're going to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I would have loved a little bit more of Rancid, because Rancid had a pretty short set as an opener.
Right.
Although I don't know if Tim's voice could handle a longer set, if we're being honest. And the Linda Lindas were the first act on the bill, and they were awesome. They kind of rocked my socks off.
Nice.
They're these young girls, and they're great.
Cool. Very cool. So a shorter leap forward to 97 with Whatever and Ever Amen, Ben Folds 5. 2 of 4 for them, 12 tracks, 49 minutes. Berkeley punk to indie rock out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. 4 Ben Folds 5 albums plus 5 solo folds. How did he wind up on your radar?
Well, I started interning at that radio station I mentioned before, The Buzz, 103.1.
Oh, yeah, out of West Palm Beach?
West Palm Beach,
okay.
yeah. Between my junior and senior years of high school, I got an internship, and basically when they would do remotes where they're like, we're out here at this
Sandstone.
restaurant,
Yeah,
or out at Sandstone, I would be handing out stickers and just doing little things like that. I'd help set up and break down the tent. I got to do a lot of concerts for free. I saw 311 for free. I saw Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan together for free. Maybe best concert of my entire life.
That's a heck of a bill.
Oh, it was so good. It was before Old Dirty Bastard died, too.
Wow. Oh, damn.
And
okay.
so it was killer. The opening act was Atari Teenage Riot, which is like an art noise rock band.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a really cool vibe to set up the whole night.
I've seen their name on festival bills.
Really?
Not recently.
Yeah.
But over the years.
Yeah, they were, they did very well when you consider what they sounded like.
Yeah.
Like they weren't, because they weren't, there was nothing that they did was like, oh, this is catchy and stays in your head. It was very much like almost music as protest.
Right.
It was really interesting, but it was a heck of a bill. I got to see a lot of different things when I was there, and Ben Folds came across my radar. Well, the first thing, the first song that I ever heard that Ben Folds 5 did was One Angry Dwarf and 200 Solemn Faces, and I just... lyrically, it just hit me because I felt like a misunderstood kid, and just I was bullied a lot growing up, and him just like being like for just being a fat kid and being the new kid. I went to 12 different schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. I went to 12 different schools.
I saw that, and I am not quite on par with you, but 6 grade schools.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and then finally some stability where it's middle school for 2 and then high school for 4.
Oh, yeah.
So I dropped out of the race of who's the perpetual new kid. But for a minute there, I was... So I know that feeling.
Yeah, we were poor a lot of the times too, and so that gets in there. I would say also I was kind of... At some point, I was kind of aggressively courting bullies, probably. I was like, come on, bring
That's
it.
an interesting pastime.
I was like, it's inevitable. Let's get this over with.
Me.
And I had a lot of rage. I grew up in some kind of abusive households, and so a lot of times you go to school and you're carrying that weight.
Yeah,
and then other kids who don't know what that's like to have that, they just see you as like, what the heck's wrong with this kid? What's this chip on his shoulder?
AF.
Yeah.
Let's go mess with him.
Exactly. And so... I love that just that line, like, if you really want to see me, check the papers and the TV. Now look who's telling who what to do. Kiss my ass. It just, like, it resonated with me. And I liked that, even though heavy metal, like, it had a heavy metal attitude.
Interesting.
And a punk rock attitude, but then it's this dude just wailing on a piano.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this sounds like singer-songwriter, but it resonates with me. There's a sense of humor to it. There's an honest anger to it. Yeah, and some snark. It's clever. It's got wit. And I always thought of myself as somebody that had a good sense of humor. And so it grabbed me in that way. And around that time, I was interning for the Buzz, and there was this girl that liked Ben Folds 5.
Okay.
And she mentioned that she wanted to go to their concert. I was like, oh, man, I'm with the Buzz, we're giving away tickets. I wish I could get some. And the dude that is running the remote, like, overheard, and he goes, buddy, I got one more pair of tickets. We're supposed to give them away over the air, but you know what? They're yours.
No way.
Yeah, and so we go. I didn't even know it. I brought the girl.
Okay.
And we were front row center. And you know what? She was not interested in me. She was nice. She was interested in me as a friend. So it's not like she did me wrong. But really, I feel like her being there was the universe's, like, sending me to see Ben Folds.
Sure.
Because we're front row center. And honestly, like, I stopped caring that I was with this girl. I was sucked into the music and just fell in love with the songs that I had not heard at that point. And so then I grabbed the album. So it's the rare case of hearing the full album live first and then grabbing it after.
Interesting. Very cool. Did halfway through, you think you can find your own ride home?
Yeah, no doubt. I like re-listened to it recently. It's still one that I'll go back to, and I just feel like the mood and the vibe, this one, as opposed to teenage angst, this feels like starting to learn what it is to be an adult. You're first going through those moments. This feels like later college, where you're starting to think that you're a grown-up, but you're still struggling with a lot of teen emotions and you're not quite mature.
Yeah. And also just absorbing... I've mentioned this a bunch of times on here, but this I just want to be big. I want to get old as a kid.
Yeah.
Be an adult, and you get there and you're like, this is it?
Yeah. And you are dealing with consequences, dealing with breakups, dealing with somebody hurting your feelings, not wanting the love that you want to give them, also looking back at mistakes that you've made. I feel like that early adulthood is one of the first times that you really start to get nostalgic for your youth, even though it was right around the corner.
Right. Well, I love that. Very short leap to 98 with Outkast's Aquemini. 3 of 6, 16 tracks, 75 minutes. Atlanta hip-hop duo Big Boy and Andre 3000. I didn't get turned on to Outkast until Stankonia.
Most people didn't.
2 years later.
Yeah.
So then I worked backwards and found Aquemini and ATLians. Was this your intro to them?
This was absolutely my intro. This was smoking marijuana illicitly in a car with some friends that put it on. And marijuana didn't stick with me. I'm not somebody that uses it to this day, but Outkast did.
Nice.
And there was just something about the vibe here that it had everything that I loved about, like, G-Funk and gangster rap. I got really, really into Death Row Records stuff around then, and I think it was finally, like, I'm starting to hear about things that are happening in the world that are not directly my experience, but I'm starting to get otherworldly with experience. But this was the first time that there was a bridge to those things that are not my experience and the things that are. As a kid that grew up poor, there's a moment, I believe, in The Art of Storytelling where he's talking to this girl, Tasha, who it's based on his real life, and I can't remember if it's Andre's or Big Boy's childhood friend, named Tasha, that ended up dying of a drug overdose. But they're talking about what they want to be when they grow up, and he says, "What do you want to be?" And she says, "Alive." And that just grabbed me, because growing up in a lot of the space that I grew up in, I wasn't sure that that was going to be me.
Damn.
And so I was like, man, a lot of these little things, just being poor in a small town, having a relative be the one that's taking care of you for a while because your parents are trying to figure things out, saying, get in here, and just being a kid that's dreaming of a life that's better than what you have.
Sure.
So much of that. But then also, like, things like the song Synthesizer with George Clinton is like predicting a lot of the AI outrage 27 years ago.
Yeah.
Talking about your synthesizer man, talking about virtual reality, and saying that he wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah. There's something about, I'm no Outkast scholar by any stretch, and I if ATLians, Aquemini, and Stankonia are the three that I know best, which they are, I don't like blindly love every track, but on each record there's a handful of tracks that really just present this pocket of comfortable, groovy, like makes you want to dance.
Oh, yeah.
And cool. Like everybody's got the ability to be cool, right? And
yeah.
Like, and I don't know. There's just something very welcoming to that coming from, say Death Row and some of the artists that they had released records on their label over the years, where it's the token women, violence, guns, cars, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Who's the badassest of all? And this is kind of like,
well, I mean, that opening track, Return of the Gangster, like right away, they're like, let's talk about more than that.
Yeah.
And it made this was an eye opener for me, because I was like, oh, hip hop is about so much more.
Right.
Because the human experience is about so much more. They're talking about a black experience, but they're also connecting it to other people's experience. And so for me, culturally, I was like, this isn't just interesting to hear, like this feels connected.
Yeah.
But when he's like, let's talk about time traveling, rhyme javelin, something mind unraveling. It's like, yes,
let's go.
I'm interested in, let's talk about other deeper things, because we've all got this part of our soul that wonders,
Sure.
what's it all about? What's it all
Sure.
mean?
So have you given the other three? They have 6 total.
Oh, Stankonia was huge for me too.
Right, but outside of ATLians, Aquemini, and Stankonia, have you listened to the other?
I mean, the speaker box and Love Below, I thought that was fascinating because
I do know that one too.
of those separations
Yeah.
there. I haven't gone back. I mean, I've listened to Southern Playlist at Cadillac Music, and it's a good album.
Okay.
West Savannah on this was originally recorded in those sessions.
Oh, wow.
And West Savannah is one of my favorite songs
Nice.
on this album.
Okay.
And ATLians is also great. And then moving past those, they didn't have a lot later in their career
No.
after Speaker Box and Love
No.
Below.
They kind of.
I think they had the Idlewild soundtrack, but
Yep.
and I really just know kind of the single from that.
Okay.
I have not heard the Andre 3000 Flute album.
Me either.
I appreciate a little flute,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just haven't had the time.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. And then last but not least, 2000s with Deftones, White Pony.
Oh man,
3 of 9, 11 tracks, 48 minutes. We go from Southern hip hop to alternative metal in Sacramento. This one's made a list or two. Why is it earn a spot for you?
oh man, it is for me. I went through a pretty heavy nu metal and rap metal phase. I was in a band.
Yeah.
We were called Chuck U. Farley. And we all of the members of the band had a stage name.
Nice.
I was the front man. I was Sinister, your lyrical minister. Our drummer was Nicodemus, which was my uncle that influenced me as a music taste as a kid.
Uncle Nick.
6 years older than me.
Yeah.
Uncle Mark.
Sorry,
but then, no, it's okay because Nicodemus became his name. He was named after the rat in The Secret of Nim.
Yeah.
And then our bass player was Cockroach, my good buddy Shane Moore. We were like, the Chili Peppers have Flea, we're gonna have Cockroach.
Nice.
And then we had a rotating. We had more guitar players than Spinal Tap had drummers.
Oh boy.
But we wrote a bunch of music and had big ambitions, and that experience made me really get heavily into the pulse of the sound that would influence me then. And I look back, and a lot of the music from that style and that era doesn't still go into my rotation.
Okay.
But White Pony is a vibe from beginning to end. It's a little bit gut-wrenching, like it takes you on a bad trip in some ways.
Absolutely.
Like the protagonist, Chino has said this is the first album where he wasn't singing like in first person.
Oh.
He was kind of singing about an experience. He was like, and it freed him up lyrically to talk about stuff because it didn't have to be his experience. So I feel like you're almost going on this movie, and it's almost like an acid trip, like from beginning to end. And I love the way it flows from one song into the other. My favorite song is probably just from the very beginning, Mini Maggot. I love that whole vibe, but that's like right before you drop the acid, and then it takes you into this plane, and then at the very end it comes back around, because the last song, Pink Maggot, actually was written before Mini Maggot.
Oh, funny.
And then they just kind of made them those bookends, but it's almost like you come back down from it.
I meant this the first time this was on somebody's list is getting on 3 years ago, and I had never sat down and listened to him, but I had in my dumb brain, because of the similarity letter-wise, Deftones and Daft Punk.
Oh, really?
That they probably would be akin musically. And I put these on and hit play, and I was like, what the? I couldn't have been wronger.
It's not, for the most part, it's not like a Clean Your House album.
No.
It's life is like, or I'm just sitting down and I'm in a moment where I've been floored and I need to just feel and process stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if it's probably not one where when I'm bouncing around feeling just full of joy that I'm putting on, but it takes me through a journey. And I think maybe even through a period of my life where I was figuring out who I was and I was scared that I wasn't who I wanted to be.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Definitely pre the therapy of dealing with childhood trauma.
Yeah. Cool stuff. I appreciate it. I usually hit you with a series of goofy questions, and then we'll wrap and get you out of here.
All right.
So the first is you get to have lunch with any one of your choosing, dead or alive. Who are you choosing and why?
Oh, man. This is a tough. You know what? My Uncle Jerry.
Okay.
Nobody knows him, obviously, because, he's dead.
Right.
And he died as a teenager.
Damn.
And he had such an impact on my family. They always talk about him. I barely remember him, and I've seen him in home videos, but they talk about just what a light he was.
Cool.
And I'd love to sit down and just chat with him.
I love that. That's great. You're given the ability to visit your past self, any age of your choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to choose myself around 2010, and I know it's not that long ago even.
Sure.
But that was in an era before I had started dealing with all the mental health stuff that I needed to, and instead I went on a bit of a self-medicated journey.
Okay.
And I would love to have skipped that and just started dealing with my own stuff. And I'd love to go and sit down with him and say, first, it's going to be okay.
Right.
And now that you know it's going to be okay, go ahead and deal with it.
Yeah.
Because you got it. You're able to do it.
Yeah.
So let's just take that patch of pain and that patch of time that I feel like kind of got wasted and go, hey, when I was there, I did waste that time. So you're not in a rush, but just go ahead and start dealing with it, and it's going to be okay.
Another great answer. If we can pretend or imagine that we all have personal and professional bucket lists, say you're given all the necessary resources to go knock out number one on both, what are your number ones?
Oh, gosh. Personal, I want to go on a trip to Europe with my wife and see all of the old world places. I want to taste all the amazing food.
Have you seen Nate Bargatze's new hour?
I haven't seen the new one. No, it's on my list.
He's got just a little thing right in the middle. Took my family to Europe last year, and I don't know if you guys know what's going on over there. If you ever are around here and you think something looks old, they have all the old over there. Everything over there is so old.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, that I'd love to do. I've never just been on like a cruise. Okay. I don't know why. Okay. I kind of want to just go out and see like Alaska. I'd love to do an Alaskan cruise and see like all the great. I want to see Europe, like the old world Europe, but I want to see like all the great northern stuff too. The lights. But all of that kind of Scandinavian era stuff as well. All the stuff that is surrounded by ice. I'd love to check it out.
Okay.
And then professional, gosh, I'd love to be able to pack a giant arena one time and just do a show that's just filled with joy. I'm working on I'd like to do an hour.
Like thousands? Like 3, 5, 7?
Let's sell it out.
Okay.
But I want my audience there. I want people that want to hear what I have to say. I don't want to just fill it.
Yeah.
And maybe even people that need to hear what I have to say. My dream hour that I want to write and perform is a show about death that makes everybody walk out feeling hopeful.
Okay.
And so that's like my project. My wife gets real uncomfortable when I talk about death and when I joke about death. And it's part of how I process it. A lot of those are darker jokes. And I want to figure out a way to do that in a way that has her also feel really good about what I talked about. Cool. And because death's a scary thing. And now that I'm you hit a certain age and you start to see a lot more people that pass away, and the temporality of this life that we get to have is imminent, but also we waste so much energy being scared of things.
Well said.
And so I would love to do something that might ease some of that for other people, and I think the journey would ease it for me.
Cool. Have you, by chance, seen Derek Delgadio's In and of Itself?
I have not.
Do you have Hulu?
I do have Hulu. Is that it's a series? Just a movie? A special? Okay.
Sort of.
All right. I don't know as many stand-ups as I should be in a pro. It's not comedy.
No,
okay.
No, it's a performance. He did 551 live performances of this show, and I really, it's one of these things where like any attempt to describe what it is will be a major disservice.
Okay.
So you have to just take the human faith torch.
Yeah.
And
it's Derek Delgado is his name?
Derek Delgadio In and of Itself.
Okay. Yeah. I will look that up for sure.
So amazing. So awesome. Amazing. And especially if you watch it with somebody that loves you and you love them. And,
great.
Cool stuff. So I know that you're old enough to recall that at one time there was a television program called Fear Factor.
Oh, yes.
So, and you know what happened on that show, right?
Yeah, people ate penises.
Most people talk about bugs crawling on. That's a first right there. That's great. So, not for the purposes of reality TV or ratings or anything, but if you had to encounter the biggest source of heebie-jeebies for you, what would your fear factor, your worst case fear factor challenge look like?
Oh man, it's gonna be probably just somebody that like. You ever watch Seven?
Yeah.
And you remember when there was the guy that was gluttony and just his body had died a long time. Like it had been long enough that everything was decaying and the texture was almost like a marbling on the skin, like the colorization. And so I'm imagining just, one of those bodies and then it opening up and then whatever's coming out is what I got to eat.
Oh, just being that, I thought was bad.
I mean, you can almost smell it just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen, to be clear. But yeah, that was the first. I have a bodily like fluids, like they freak me out and creep me out, and now and then my wife and I will be talking, and she'll just say something that's a descriptor, and it's not even super graphic, and I'll go, great, and I have to set my utensils down, and I'm done.
Right.
And she'll be like, I don't understand, because then another time I'll say something, but for some reason it doesn't fit within my parameters of what's problematic. But to her, she's like, but dude, you just talked about a bodily function. And I'm like, I don't know, sorry, but it wasn't a problem. And she's like, well, you can't say that around me if I can't say this around you.
Do you know Ryan Sickler? Stand-up who hosts a podcast called The Honeydew.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that. Okay, yeah, I think I do know who you're talking about.
He started on the Your Mom's House network with Tom Segura and Christina Pajitsky, and then grew enough to where he could just step out and make his own channel.
Right.
He, I think, still does The Honeydew with y'all. So The Honeydew, he mostly just has comics in, and they talk about their trauma and why they are stand-up comics, basically.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But The Honeydew with y'all is just with folks, like fans and listeners that send in crazy stories that have happened to them.
Yeah.
And one of the earlier ones of those, there was a person whose job it was to go clean up Biohazard.
Oh, God.
And somebody had died in bed long time ago.
Ooh.
And
I'm just imagining the flies buzzing around.
well, probably that, but also after a while, like stuff truly, this was kind of news to me, liquefies.
Oh, yep.
And nobody knew that this dude was up there, and the person that lived below, started dripping on their face or their person in their bed.
Oh my gosh.
It liquefied so much and came down
like
through.
it leaked through the floor.
That's how somebody discovered that there was something going on upstairs. So
Could you imagine yawning and you just get a drop on your tongue?
Okay.
I just immediately just have to leap off a building.
Yeah. Hopefully I get another body because I'm throwing this one out.
Yeah, this one's done.
All right, please complete this for me. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live if only
people stopped worrying about things that don't actually affect them.
Well said.
I mean, you look at right now, and if you look at the chaos and the division that's happening in the world, so many people have been convinced that they need to be mad at these other people who are just living their lives and doing the things that they enjoy that don't actually affect that person.
Absolutely.
It's not that hard to just let people do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else.
As the old adage, you can extend your arm as far as you want, as long as it doesn't.
Exactly, as long as it doesn't hit me.
Yeah. Great answers, man. So, Jamie Campbell, JamieCampbellComedy.com, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, streaming services. Big Dad Energy is out via the streaming platforms,
you can find,
plus YouTube.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Amazon Prime, on Tubi. If you want to listen to it, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all of the obscure streamers. It's on Deezer if you got a Cricket phone.
Yeah. Was that dude really your neighbor?
Which dude? Oh, no.
Oh.
Yeah, up top, I do this song to open up the special, and I tell everybody, give it up for my neighbor, Jared. He's an actor that the director knew that introduced me to him. A great guy. And he's not my neighbor, but because we made the set, we actually laid down turf. You can't see it as well in the special, but we brought out a lawnmower and we hung out like backyard string lights.
Oh, wow.
To kind of give it a backyard feel.
Cool.
And for that reason, when he comes out hyping, I was like, Yeah, it makes sense. In the neighborhood that we're saying that this set is,
Cool.
he would be my neighbor.
Very cool.
It is not the first time I've been asked that.
Okay. And so the new special, refresh my memory on all the pertinence for that.
The new special, I haven't been given a release date yet, but it's going to be coming out on Dry Bar Comedy.
Dry Bar, right.
And I don't even know for sure. I think we're going to call it Middleman.
Okay.
Middle age, middle class in Middle America. But we'll see what they decide on. I don't know all the details yet.
They decide on?
Title
wise?
We will. Well, they take my input, but when they're the production company.
Sure.
So I'm 90% sure that that's what we're going to go with. Okay. But if they're like, we're not sure that that's marketable, then I may throw out a different title for them. From what I've heard, they're really awesome to work. Like they literally have given me feedback or allowed me to give feedback into the editing process of which versions of the jokes, because we filmed a couple of shows. They've been awesome.
Oh,
straight up.
Gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes Comic X is they're ready to put out their new special, so they choose a city and a venue, and they do they tape 3 shows or 4 shows, and then they're splicing it together to get exactly what they want the hour to look like. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
so
what
you did that too. You taped multiple.
I taped 2 shows, and basically they sent the footage to me of both, and 90% of it is going to be the second show. It just felt a little looser. My nerves were gone, but there were just a couple of moments that hit a little bit harder, or I felt like my delivery was just a little bit better in the first show. So I'm like, if it works and it feels natural to put the first show version in there, then let's see what it looks like. So I was like, I felt like that hit.
Can you tell us where they were recorded, or no? Is that?
Yeah, they were all recorded at the Dry Bar Comedy Club in Provo, Utah.
Oh,
they've got their own club.
I missed that piece.
Oh yeah,
that they have their own club.
Yep, they've got their own club. It's a really cool space. Those people rock out there. That entire production company, they made my wife feel incredibly welcome. Normally, you're filming a comedy special for another company. You don't go, hey, can I bring a guest? But this is a big momentous moment in my life, so I wanted to bring my wife, and I asked if she could watch the show, and they're like, not only could she watch the show, she can come hang out backstage. And so when I went in, they let her come hang out while I did hair and makeup. She got to hang out in the balcony and watch me film some promos that are going to come out. And like they told her she could take, pictures and footage to commemorate the occasion. They bought her dinner, gave her a free sweatshirt.
Dang.
Like they treated her great. And right away I was like, these guys, when I talked about loyalty, when you treat me well, I will always come back. Like straight up, I have nothing but awesome things to say about the way I've been treated by both artistically and just as a person by Dry Bar.
So Big Dad Energy had about 100 people in the room, and the new one, how many folks?
I'd say there were, between audience member and then cast and crew and like guests upstairs, probably around 250. But yeah.
And did they market it? Was it a joint?
They market their own season. So basically, I think it's once a year, maybe twice a year. They do basically a month worth of specials.
Gotcha.
And so people locally, they know that they're going to be in an audience for a special that's going to have a bunch of people. The Dry Bar name is big enough that their audience is going there, and they're like, if somebody is a comedian that Dry Bar is putting up, we're going to like them.
Do they serve drinks at Dry Bar?
They don't serve alcohol, no. So it's alcohol free, and I think they serve like soda. They have a limeade that's supposed to be awesome, and candy. So yeah, what's kind of cool is like your whole audience is sober too, and they're an awesome audience.
Nice. So are you thinking 2025 or?
I think it'll be out this year.
Okay. Cool.
I'm hoping that it's going to be out this year.
And you'll obviously hit the socials and all the stuff.
Absolutely. Oh, big time. Right. Yeah. I'm really hoping that this will, because the Dry Bar name has a lot of cachet in a lot of different clubs and venues. And so I'm hoping that this will reach a big audience and allow me to then go out and really to allow my audience to find me. The people that don't know me that would like what I do to find me, so that I can then go out to bigger venues all over the country and perform specifically for my audience. Because right now I'm going out and performing for audiences that are like, I want to check out comedy. And I want people that are in the audience that are like, I want to see what Jamie's got to say because I love what I've already seen.
Right. Nice. I forgot to ask you how you wound up in Kansas City.
I wound up in Kansas. I toured here. The first time that I toured here, I was a performer with a group called Baby Wants Candy that does a fully improvised rock musical with a band. I wasn't a member of their full ensemble, but I was kind of someone that they would use as a fill-in performer when they had too many gigs for their regular performers to fill. And they were headlining the Kansas City Improv Festival.
Okay. And
so I flew in from Chicago. I was living in Chicago at the time here, and I really just kind of fell in love with the local scene. The next year, I'd released Tell Me You're Proud of Me, my debut stand-up album, and I got in touch with them to tour. And I came out, I taught a couple of improv workshops and did 2 stand-up shows as part of the tour and fell even farther in love with the comedy scene. I just loved the vibe. I liked that there was a small town sensibility, which takes me to my childhood, about Kansas City. There's this kindness and a sense of community and almost family in the city that I really like. But at the same time, you have all of the things that you want from a big city accessible to you, because that was a big reason why I had to get out of small town areas, was like, there's so much that I want to do and experience in the world that just doesn't exist in a small town.
Right. Well, it was really nice to meet you. I appreciate the time. Any plugs that we haven't touched on, or things that you had hoped that we would cover that we didn't?
I think we touched everything. If you go to JamieCampbellComedy.com or just look at Jamie Campbell Comedy on pretty much all the social medias, you can find me there. And if you're coming to a show, or if you're following me on something, shoot me a DM and let me know that you heard me on the show, and I'll give you a follow back.
Cool. Yeah, there's, again, the great looking website, and as of today, there's a healthy list of gigs where you can either hit that ticket link or maybe it's the venue link.
Yeah, and if you've got a venue in your city and you're like, I would love to see you here, but I don't see you touring to this area, I'll go anywhere that's got a venue if I can, work it in my schedule and make the time. So just send me a message and we'll see if I can't get out to where you're at.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it, and talk to you soon.
All right. Great.